if the people in the Palestine is rebelling against Zionist state, we should be very happy to see it. We should not sing like our slave master. We must be continuous in rebellion, and never be domesticated. So our diaspora across the world, organize, mobilize, and fight. Not like this fucking Jacobins that write articles. If Burkina Faso is doing right, is Thomas Sankara, shut the fuck up. It's not your concern to say that we reclaim Thomas Sankara. It's not them to say this Palestinian struggle, this Iran, this. Shut the fuck up and do your part instead of write bullshit that nobody will read. So if you are in court of empire, you are not classified as an enemy. Probably you are walking with the enemy.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes. Hey everybody, this is Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV, and we are in the neighborhood of Cova Da Moura in the capital of Portugal, Lisbon. Before we continue here, I ask you to press the subscribe button and the like button on whatever social media platform you're watching this on, and to go to our website, freepalestine.video, to donate so we can continue bringing you this content. You already, Cova Da Moura is the Cove of the Moors. So you can tell that there is a connection to the long history of Arabic Moorish people in Portugal. But today it is mainly inhabited by people from the former colonies of Portugal, Cape Verde, Angola, and others. And we have with us a very special guest today, Flávio Almada, who is an organizer in the neighborhood and a famous, before rapper. Your name was LBC Soldjah, and you are an MC, poet, and coordinator at Moino da Juventude, which means the young people's Moino is what?
The mills.
Okay.
Mills.
So again, this is a community center. Today with us, Flavio is going to give us an introduction to what's happening in the neighborhood, but we're going to be talking, of course, about the history of colonialism and anti-colonialism in the communities and nations that these people come from, and the current situation here. Thank you so much for having us, Habibi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So, you know, a lot of people outside Portugal don't remember these histories that we're going to be talking about. But you know, the struggle for decolonization is not only in our homelands. Our diaspora communities that are forced out of the colonies continue their struggles under this oppression that we're here, and the you know, black and brown people. I don't like this color. They force on us.
Yes, they impose us.
We should be calling them pink.
Yes.
But our communities here still continue suffering from the results of colonialism. Tell us about the situation in the neighborhood for the youth, the police violence, and such.
Look, first of all, welcome. Said that first to manifest my deep solidarity with the Palestinian struggle, with the Lebanese struggle, with the anti-colonial struggles, whatever the means that the oppressed use to fight against their oppressor, the occupier, the settler. So for us, we don't have a doubt to express our total solidarity with the Palestinian struggle, whatever the enemy is necessary. For us, we classify here a kind of internal colonialism as a continuity that manifests in different ways in the question of access of a job, Yeah, that was saying that if he needs to close the music.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so generous of
Yeah.
him. You see, this is a community.
Yeah.
This is a community feeling.
Yeah.
Even with this poverty and enforced colonialism, people are communicating together
Yes.
as if they are real neighbors, not
Yes.
Like how people live outside.
No.
here.
This is totally different because the colonial always try to break us to be together. So this is linked with for instance, we as African youth, if we go 3 or 4, the police come to raid us. Also in the community, they demolish our community. The Portugal history, like you mentioned, we link with the Moors, that the Christian kingdom he provoke cultural genocide, and the slavery and the colonialism. They always try to break us to not to be together. And in Portugal, for instance, there's a African community back in the days that were destroyed. Several African community, poor immigrants community, are demolished, destroyed in Amadora, in Lisbon. Right now, it is happening. So for us, the colonialism is not a past. It's still present because it's internal colonialism that manifests in job access, housing, participation, political participation, representation. Of course, the most visible part is police violence. That for us, police operate inside the community like a military squad operating in occupied zone. So we have but we still struggle community feelings to be together, to organize together, to go together, to face the situation together, and not to be just here, but to understand that our struggle is not just here. So it's globally. We are internationalists. So in the sense, we link our struggle with different kind of struggle across the world.
You know, when we first started walking, I was thinking about the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon and in the West Bank and Gaza that don't exist now in Gaza. But this feeling of imposed poverty, imposed inclusion of the community, and the fact that people persevere and continue to be a community under these conditions, supporting each other, knowing each other, coming and talking to each other, and of course the violence that comes in Lebanon, of course the state, the Lebanese police and so on, the violence against the Palestinian refugees. And we're standing here beside this mural. Of course everybody knows Tupac, but tell us the story about this mural.
This mural was designed in sense to manifest, to create a memory by the youth of our generation that we lost. For instance, we have several cases here of someone that were killed by the police. We have Angelo Angoy, that was 16 years old. He was shot on the back. He was with problem even to walking, but the police shooting 6 times on his back, and then claiming self-defense. And then we have Celestino Sele, that was shot 56 times by the police, because it was classified as a very dangerous. Because we have many forms of resistance. People react different ways. Some people resist. So it was killed, executed in the way to say, look, this is what we will do to you, to inculcate a kind of fear on our community. And then you have several cases of daily brutality of police. In fact, police is organized violence. Police is violence. So we made this mural. Why we link it with Tupac? Because it is a metaphor olazomi of Tupac. It was because when they killed Angelo Angoy, people start to go out to the street to protest, to resist, to come to the street, to go against the pigs that come to smash our community. So the cameras, the mainstream cameras, the majority of white society start to point to us, to demonize us, to criminalize us. So we said all eyes on Cova Da Moura, because all camera was pointed in Cova Da Moura. So that's the reason in Tupac, and also because Tupac could relate with us, because we are studying Tupac, and Tupac was linked with the Black Panther Party for self-defense.
His aunt was Assata Shakur, and she's one of the most important voices, and his mother was also kind of killed because of, and now of course they assassinated him when he started becoming more political in his music.
Yeah, because they killed him when they was thinking to drop the music, to make a part of to become a kind of a member or so-called leader of a revolutionary party. So we link with Tupac because Tupac comes from the hood, and Tupac with his music was express what we were living, even with the different with the specificity. But for instance, when you say they got money for war, but they can't feed the poor, for us it's something that to say, yeah, you have money to fund the police, but you don't have money to fund us. Like for instance, the European Union and the other Western country, they support the so-called state, the entity of Israel, and the others kind of war across in the world, but they don't have money to put for housing, for job, for cultural center, for education. So for us, Tupac metaphor, it was relevant and is still relevant, and we can see now that the United States is funded the Zionist dogs, and the European Union and Portugal is also funded with different ways, and the Zionists pull the trigger and provoke the genocide in Palestine. For us, we link because in that same song Tupac say is the war in the Middle East. Even that I don't like this kind of term of Middle East because it's very colonial, but explain a very situation at the time and still now. That's the reason. And also Tupac say fuck police, say fuck police, and when Tupac was saying fuck police, for us like it's validating or reality. When we say fuck police, some people say that we cannot say fuck police, but Tupac will say keep saying fuck police. For us, it's like that. That's the reason that we pay homage to our comrades and also to Tupac Shakur.
Tudo pobre se mami sabe melhor Soldjah, que ele paniga na street e que se da rola, da busca hoje às vezes vida tá melhora. Ontem mãe partilha comigo, sem sabedoria, é flama no meu selva, cheio de armadilha. Não sabe mal quem tá caminha, para que pensa mina, nesse dia a dia sabe na consegue, tu acredita. Curar pensa que a puta ama o inimigo, mata o amigo, mas de hoje vivo, minha filho, para ele já organiza. Busca ninja knowledge e disciplina, essas matemáticas.
So we can see here a mural with
Jorge Neto, very famous artist. His son is there.
And the flag of Cape Verde?
Yeah, flag of Cape Verde. For me, this flag symbolizes a breakup of anti-colonial struggle and a kind of submission for me, because
there was another flag.
Another flag that was come from the liberation movement led by Amilcar Cabral, and those people that created this flag, they also remove the name of the street with the anti-colonial leaders. For instance, very quickly, there's a neighborhood that used to be called Kwame Ture. But when they put the flag too, they remove the name and they put back to the ancient name, Craveiro Lopes, that it was a colonial pig.
You know, it reminds me of what the Al-Julani is doing in Syria, ripping the Syrian flag and putting the colonial flag of Syria when the French were occupying, taking out all the monuments and the street names for the famous revolutionaries in the Arabic world that fought for the liberation. And so a lot of times our anti-colonial struggles is incomplete. You know, Amilcar Cabral was an icon in for decolonization around the world.
Our people have the obligation to liberate our country, see, to contribute for the liberation of Africa. Our army is not a military organization like the other armies, you know. You see, our army is an instrument of our people to fight for independence. He developed from nothing until now what you have seen, you see. But the principal character of our army is that we are not military people. We are armed militants.
Let's talk a little bit about was special about Amilcar, how his thinking was different from the first generation of decolonial movements, and how he viewed the anti-colonial, anti-imperialist struggle.
Look, for us, Cabral represents the way of thinking and acting, a break with the generation that come before, also as a continuity. But what is important to Cabral is that Cabral say, we will not back. We will take our back, we will come to enter the history by any means necessary. We are not militarists in the sense, but we understand that the struggle has different means, different ways. So the way that Cabral, with his comrades, with the organizing, the way that they do, they organize in different fronts, and also they didn't isolate. Cabral connect his struggle to global anti-imperialist struggle. So right now, for instance, you see in Cape Verde, some people try to clean out that Cabral was not right in support the Palestinian struggle. In fact, Cabral, when he was in Tricontinental Conference in Havana, he said, yes, we are totally in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. He said several times. Because also to the Palestinian delegation, when they were in Algiers, they mentioned the struggle of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. And the Zionist pigs, they are the enemy in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, in everywhere. In fact, right now, the Zionist pig is responsible for being complicity in the genocide in the Congo, with the police killing black people in favela in Brazil, with the police kill Latin Americans in the United States. So Cabral understands that the struggle for decolonization is an international anti-imperialist struggle. He said several times, and he made it clear that it's very important for us to be connected in terms of struggle. Because without support of Algerian revolution, Cape Verde will not be independent. Like, for instance, without Nasser, the support of Nasser in Egypt too was very important for the anti-colonial movement in Africa and in other part. Without the support of some people that used to work very closely from Venezuela, with Cabral, what it was in Sweden, will be more difficult. Without a lot of Tunisian support, even Morocco now, that is a very complicated country now in terms of anti-imperialist struggle, because it is oppressing Sahrawi people, and also it walk with the dog of Zionists that killing people in everywhere. And right now, the generation of Cabral generation that I know in Cape Verde, in Portugal, and also in Burkina Faso and in Ghana, is the people that in South Africa, is people that recognize Cabral and other figures of liberation and support totally for the liberation of people of Palestine. So for us, the first question is self-determination. So Cabral is very important, and right now Cabral is not just the figure. Cabral is a kind now of program for complete liberation.
You know, there's a lot of things that are connected with Amilcar, because his name means the slave of the god Malkart, which is the son of, or the you know, that is the Canaanite god from the time of the Carthaginians, and we have, of course, our
father
hero.
of Hannibal.
Yes, yes, of course. And Hannibal, of course, is the warrior of the original decolonization
Against the Romans.
Against the Romans, and so these connections for us. A lot of people in the new generations maybe forget these things. The Pan-African and Pan-Arab liberation movements were intertwined.
Yes.
And Amilcar himself, he said that he's not there for liberation of Palestine just as a box. That's Palestine. He understood that the liberation of Palestine is for the unification of the Arabic people.
Yes.
The same thing with the liberation of Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau. It's about liberation of all of Africa and unification with that. So when we are talking to this new generation that lost this, how can we make them understand that they shouldn't isolate themselves from the rest of the struggles? What do you do in your outreach to this new youth, the new generation, to get them to remember these important stories?
If I can give my humble opinion, what I try sometimes to do with the youth is said, who taught you that you should isolate? You ask a question, who said that you should be in the box? And then you start to have a conversation. And also, I try to go pick up the for instance, Amilcar Cabral, a lot of generation of struggles, of people that struggle against colonialism and imperial struggle, and conversate with them how those people were linked, like you were said before, with the Pan-Arab movement, anti-colonial movement, with the Pan-African anti-colonial movement, with the question of unity, the unification. For instance, a few days ago, we speak about Black Panther Party. People try to locate the Black Panther Party in the United States. People love Huey Newton because Tupac, because the figure of Huey Newton. For instance, to say, look, Black Panther Parties were linked with all oppressed people around the world. And also because, the Zionists, right now, to go specifically, they try to create a kind to confine us in the skin. In the skin. So the colonial logic, so we speak about that our skin is not our geography, or not program. That by understanding a wide scale of and the multi-scale of oppression, with some more intense, more violent than others, but still oppression, and to understand where they come from, where the main contradiction, where they come from, and speak about that. And the question of fight against the loss, the production of loss of memory. Because what they try to do right now for this community is a kind of memory, destruction of memory, like for instance Portugal did with the presence of Moors, or with the most 20% of African people in Lisbon. So the reconnection is to show the connection, financial connection, like for instance with the police. Say, who train the police? Look, Zionists train the police. But even if it didn't have a kind of a connection, we have one ideal. an idea of a new humanity, or new humanism, like used to say Frantz Fanon, an idea that we must defend, an idea that we must preserve, and that the expression of the solidarity is an expression of revolutionary love with sacrifice that is all struggle too. It's not your struggle, but it's our struggle. This is the kind of very difficult conversation sometimes to take, and also that we should not tell the oppressor how they want to fight, how should fight. It's not, our solidarity must not be conditional, because this is not solidarity, this is paternalism. So when we express solidarity, if someone thinks that's armed struggle, yeah, by any stand of moral, the violence of the oppressor is equal of the oppressor. No. So our solidarity that we try to speak with the youth is not conditional. We express solidarity if it's armed struggle, the oppressor fight armed struggle. If he with the culture struggle, okay, that is not us. That we should do our part. Our part is do solidarity in practical way, is express, amplify the voice, and do what we can do. Not just also we can do, but what is to do effort to do what is necessary. To do necessary. So is a difficult conversation to have, because why I'm saying that? Because right now with the Palestinian struggle, when people say Hamas, it's like if you have to be a good victim. You have to be the
Perfect victim.
Yeah, okay. The hunter come and eat you. You say thank you, but if you resist, you are not good. So, our point of view is always to say we are definitely in express of solidarity. If it is not us that choose the movement of liberation, it's the people that is in front line that choose movement of liberation. For us, it's like in Europe right now. Look, Hamas. Say, yeah, they should cross the armies and die. Yeah, and die. So because also to attack the idea in Europe of decolonization, because in Europe decolonization become a metaphor. Mm-hmm. It's decolonization without land. If you not put the land question central, the sovereignty of people to recover the land, is not decolonization. It's a kind of exotic conversation. So this right now in Europe, decolonization is like a kind of food, this, but decolonization that the last become the first, like say Frantz Fanon, that the end of the war of the oppressor, there's a decolonization that to force confront and the oppressor smash the oppressor. That's what we stand for.
So, Flavio, a lot of people know that, of course, the Portuguese occupy Brazil, they occupy a lot of African countries, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Angola, Mozambique, but they also forget that they occupied what is now the UAE and Oman, mm-hmm. and south of Iraq and coast of Iran. And the struggle for the liberation in those places, in Africa, in the Arabic world, is what caused the end of Portuguese imperialism and led to the Carnation Revolution. Mm-hmm. Like the people forget also, the French Revolution wouldn't have happened if there was no Haitian Revolution.
Yes.
And so let's explain to our audience about the connections between Portugal, imperialism, and also how the Zionism worked with it. I know from my research that the Portuguese were using Israeli weapons to oppress people in West Asia West Africa during the revolutions. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned as we were walking how the police here are still being trained by the Israelis to oppress people. Talk about this connection.
It's very important to people know that the Portuguese colonialism, slavery, they didn't just occupy Angola, Mozambique, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, but they occupy a lot of part of now that's called Asia. If I'm not mistaken, they reach Hormuz in Iran. They provoke war in the Arabian Peninsula and occupy a lot of stuff. They went to India, a lot of part of Japan, and a lot of part. The connection is one part directly with the colonialism, the military occupation, the colonial occupation, Portuguese colonial occupation across the world, in Africa, Latin America, Asia, Australia, and the other parts. This show how can I say, how the oppressor was international in oppressors. So it makes sense to us to understand as oppressed in different parts of the world that we must come together. And the anti-colonial struggle in for instance, that provoked Carnation Revolution is linked one directly with the struggle for liberation in Guinea-Bissau, the military defeat, but also with the support of the Algerian revolution, where some Portuguese resistance used to broadcast information from Algeria. So the Carnation Revolution will not be possible without the defeat that the anti-colonial movement made against the Portuguese state colonialism, and that was supported by the Zionists. In fact, Zionists support all kind of colonialism in African continent. It was directly linked with the apartheid in South Africa. And one thing that perhaps is not well known, that the Portuguese during the time so-called colonial republic, they did a kind of a concession to the Zionist movement to be part in Angola. They say so the project, one part of the project was to be in Angola. And right now we can see the link back in days, but the link didn't where it's not broke. The Zionists still has do a lot of bad things in Africa, linked with the monopolies, multinational companies, and also to fund a kind of idea to try to convince black people that they are choosing people too. This kind of Zionism that look, you are a part of us, like the movement that Zionists that come from Europe, that used to be, still is, very racist with the Jews that they call Mizraim. Now they are trying to say black people, look, you have Arab slavery, you have Islamic slavery. Look at this kind of innocence. You have 400 of slavery of Europeans, but nobody call it Christian slavery. Nobody call it Christian slavery. So the production of a kind of a propaganda to try to seduce African people to support the Zionists is doing a lot of harm to Africa. But in the same sense, in the Israel entity, I refuse to call the state a cult entity, call it a crusade entity. So the crusade entity, when the African immigrants go to so-called Israel state, they are called cockroaches. Cockroaches, and even the so-called Falash Ethiopian Jews, they are sterilized in the Israel. And also you see the connection between the Zionists and the Rwanda, because Rwanda now is provoking a massive destruction in Congo, link with the Israel, with the Zionists, with the United States, with the European Union, with the imperialists. So this link we must understand as oppressed people globally, in particular African people or in the diaspora or outside that our struggle is directly linked, is linked directly. So it is necessary to create a global movement against Zionism, because Zionism is nothing but imperialism with another name. Is a Western imperialism, is a white supremacy. Imperialism is what happened right now, and also we can see how the Zionists always chasing black leaders, especially in the United States. We don't know now if the Zionist link with the French secret police was not direct link in some plot against Amilcar Cabral in Guinea-Conakry. We don't know. It's something that it must be a problem. But you see, Malcolm X, Malik el-Shabazz, was chased by the Zionists. And the Malcolm X support the Palestinian struggle. You see, Kwame Ture, soccer Michael, that's one that taught us a lot about Zionism, and said Zionists is our main enemies, was chased by the Zionists. You see Black Panther Party leaders, you see a lot of leaders in the United States, and you see also in the fight against apartheid, how the Zionists was and still today, you see this kind of link. And I would take advantage to say the link that the Sun Gulf states, Special Emirates, UAE, is linked with the genocide in Sudan. And why is my opinion. And it's linked with the Zionists too, because Zionists know that if they don't destroy the Sudan, that Sudan will be probably the first country, or not the first, but one of these country people that will go against Zionists together with the Palestinians. Because for historical, the way that Sudan and the Sudanese resistance understand, and you see this link. So to speak about the fight of Palestinians is to understand that the fight of Palestinians is not only fight of Palestinians, is our fight too, as an African, as a worker, as a people that has a sense of dignity for humanity, and to understand that it doesn't make sense to shout about the genocide in Congo if you don't say nothing about Palestine, or doesn't make sense if you go in the United States against police violence or prison industrial complex without saying nothing about Palestine. In fact, there's something that is interesting to know about how George Jackson, that he was a field marshal of Black Panther Party. People during a long time thought that the Enemy of Sun, the poem, was made by George Jackson, but it's a Palestinian poem by, if I'm not mistaken, by Samuel Kassim, the Enemy of the Sun. And even the newspapers of Black Panther Party, it used to be broadcast as a George Jackson poem. But George Jackson, when he was killing, they found the poem in the cell of George Jackson, and people say George Jackson wrote this poem, but this poem was Palestinian. This show how political prisoners in conditions very understand or obligation to support the Palestinian struggle. So one to conclude is or link the link that Zionists has across the world, link with Portugal that oppress us, link with the European Union that is now killing immigrants in the borders, with the European Union that is supporting the killing in Sudan. So they understand that our oppressor is common, but not just to do a diagnostic, but also to act against our oppressor, even that we can act locally, but it will do impact and show love to Palestinian resistance.
You know, you called it the crusade state or colony. I call them the Jewsade colony. And, you know, you mentioned this Zionist efforts to break any solidarity between Arabic and Sub-Saharan African people. because they remember the solidarity that existed between Egypt, Algeria, and sub-Saharan African brothers and sisters that helped us gain all this independence, even if it was momentary, and broke the powers of the empires. And I want to add one more thing. Palestine is part of Africa.
Yes.
It is part of the African plate, and the Dead Sea is the schism that goes all the way to the valley in Ethiopia through the Red Sea.
Yes.
We are African also on Palestine, not only because of the love that and understanding that is there between all the people around Africa to Palestine, but actually geography even.
Yes,
we are
yes.
African, and we will, inshallah, change the maps and make Palestine part of Africa. So this will never be forgotten.
Just one thing is amazing because M1 for Dead Press, he has a song with the Shakir Mansour. He say Palestine is RBG. It's not the coincidence. Look the flag.
Good. How you doing?
So there's currently, of course, a lot of police brutality we heard. This is usual for years, but there's a story right now about a group of 70 police officers that were raping the prisoners and beating them, abusing them. And of course, as a Palestinian, I hear this. I feel that there's more boldness in how
Yes.
this police, because they watch how the Israelis get away with rape on camera, and maybe they're starting to think that they can also get the same because they're also trained by these same Israelis.
Yes. They look. It's not just the police. For instance, this neighborhood, because the Zionist entity is applying bulldozer, equipar bulldozer with the guns, and demolish the Palestinian house. So, right-wing dog called Susana Garcia from the right-wing party, she proposing during the campaign to demolish this neighborhood.
Hello.
Calma. Vai larga. Não pode no chão.
Como é que Boa. Oi, como é que é? Tudo fixe? Oma.
It's the next generation.
Yeah.
The next
Luís, como é que é? Tudo fixe?
Eu vou tirar foto.
Hã?
Vou tirar foto.
Então, como é que é, vai? Yeah. Grande, Luís. Você pode tirar foto, né? Yeah. Tranquilo.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This you can see the strong new generation.
Yeah. I hope.
Hopefully they'll lift us
Yes.
up with them.
Yeah.
Habibi.
Habibi. Tá bom, Luís. Yeah. Amanhã, né?
Yeah.
Até amanhã, yeah? Yeah. Até filmar.
LBC.
Yeah. Oh, depois eu vou tipo, olha, vou imprimir, vou vos entregar, tá bom? Depois dá para entregar. Yeah. I work with them. Yeah, I work with the have almost a lot of kids to go pick up to school and work with them, support school and conversate.
We do all of this
Yeah.
struggle always for the next generation,
Como é que é? Yeah.
so they don't live the same things that we live.
Yes.
And live a better life, and this is why we sacrifice.
Yes.
For all of us.
LBC, que tá fazendo na rua?
Tô a andar aí.
And
Vai lá
they-
com a tua mãe, vai.
And you know, they
Yeah.
deserve to take all the time, all the air for you guys.
Ó, só a cabeça de pato.
Tchau, cabeça de pato. Eu tenho cabelo comprido, ah? Meu cabelo é comprido, maior que o teu. Yeah. Deixa o Luís é assim. O Luís é tranquilo.
Yes. Sometimes it's hard to be happy
Yeah.
and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
You're talking about them wanting to demolish
Yeah.
this, just like they're doing to the refugee camps
Yes.
in Palestine, and the violence that we watch on social media, our bodies
Yes.
made into death, and over and over. It's hard, but we need to resist.
We will survive, definitely. Definitely believe, without any kind of doubt, that there will be not have a force to break the Palestinian struggle, because international is every day strong, and I believe that very quickly all the press people will raise up to share part of sacrifice that we must do in effort to be effective kind of support, because as Cabral said, we will not defeat the imperialism by shout. We will defeat imperialism by raising, by organizing, by combat. And just to finish, that dog that made a video, Susana Garcia, she made a video in bulldozer. So it reminds me Sama Jabbar, psychologist, the Palestinian. She said that the way that the normalization, the naturalization, the passivity of so-called international community, like United Nations, like all this kind of organization, human rights, will naturalize the kind of, will stimulate the violence across the world against oppressed people. And we see that not just in the language, in the video, by right-wing say the erase, because they're using the language of Smotrich, to erase the community, to demolish the communities, and to kill them. Like, for instance, right-wings put a kind of outdoor that is calling for ethnic cleansing indirectly, because first they naturalize, dehumanize, and then come the violence. So what happened right now in Palestine, in Lisbon, in the resistance about Iran, that people don't want to say Iran is the country that take a good position, a good position to fight. It must be said, not in the sense of Iran is no, that is not as that has to do that. Iran is the right to fight against the United States of America, to fight against the Zionists, and the violence is there, connected directly with what happened right now in the language that they use, in the daily violence, the raping that happened, the massive raping that happened in Palestine, is linked with what happened with those pigs in Ratu police station, that they rape. In fact, in the conversation, they have this kind of conversation. Yeah, we should do to you, or to our community, like the Zionist dogs is doing in Palestine, like they say that the police is doing in favelas of Brazil, that is closely linked with the Zionist training, with the Zionist network. So the naturalization of violence, because they rape immigrants. They do that because the genocide that we all see it, we are seeing it, and we are not acting like we are supposed to acting. This stimulates this force to raping people, to demonize people, and sometimes to go free. And like, for instance, like the victim that will be judged. For instance, the killing, the shooting of Odair, how they killed our brother Odair, and when the people raised up to protest the way that they understand, because it is for decades, for years, for background historicals of the violence that they kill us, that we continue to resist. They try to pacify us like it was Odair right now, that in trial, in the court room. is the community that is in the courtroom, is all black people, all Jeeps, all oppressed people, all workers in the courtroom. So you see not just the language, but in the acts. And you see that. And yes, 2 days ago, the government, the right-wing government, passed a law that now will force the people that is the prisoners of this war, of our community, of poor communities that is in the prison, to go to clean up the forest. And also they create another kind of euphemism they call zones of social impact of criminality. That's a kind of euphemism for what they used to call sensitive zones. This kind of euphemism that we know in practice ways means repression, state violence, racist violence, but it's all connected, and the people must wake up to understand right now that is a fight for humanity and Palestine. And by raising up here, or in Africa, or in Latin America, or Asia, any part of the world against Zionism is what will be the future.
Let's walk a little bit here and finish it on one
Come
more.
again. To the fishing. Yeah.
One more thing that maybe our communities.
Hey, mo como está?
Tudo bem?
Tudo bem tu?
Okay.
Duro com ele, mo.
This my friend.
Hã?
My friend.
Friends de Palestina. Hã? Yeah. Nho tá falando inglês, nho dali em inglês.
No.
Nho anda muito tempo na barco.
No. You strong man. You speak English. You don't speak English.
You speak English very well. I know that you speak English.
No.
Bom hoje nho manho está direito, yeah?
Hey, God bless you.
Yeah.
Okay.
protect you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bom hoje nho.
This is my brother.
Yeah.
My friend. My brother.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There's another point in history that maybe we can mention here because of how there is a spirit of rebellion building around the world, and especially in communities that are still struggling from the effects of colonialism.
Yes.
Is the uprising, the Muslim enslaved people uprising in Salvador, in Bahia, in Brazil. When we think about communities like here who are surrounded by a society that doesn't want to rebel against, what is the role of our communities, since we can't depend on, let's say, the Portuguese society to rebel against colonialism and imperialism, except when we defeat them on the front line in Guinea-Bissau.
Yes.
So our communities here in diaspora, in Portugal, in Spain, in America, in Canada, in other places, what do you think is their role in pushing revolutionary fervor in the societies that they are capturing?
I think we should do our part. We should rebel. We should rebel. Why we should rebel? Because we must, if we want to have a future, we should rebel. We should do our part because we should not wait. I think that if slaves, the people that are reduced to slavery in Brazil, the Malays, the people that come from West Africa, if they choose for the society, Brazil, rest society, to time for rebel, they still will be in the chains. So when the Asian revolution, the people that, for instance, like Jean-Jacques Dessalines said, we will smash everything that's colonial, we will smash it. They say we will do this for us and for all the entire of the oppressed people. Because if we will not rebel, we will fail. We will fail because I think that it was Fidel Castro that said people think that if they give a concession, that they will leave. But if you give a concession, you will not leave. You will die, or mentally, or spiritually, or even physically, you will die. So this goes direct to the people in the core of imperialism in the United States. that we write new papers to classify which fight is legitimate or right or not. Do your part and rebel, not just in writing tests on Facebook. No, do your part acting. If you stop to acting, you will fail, and the story will prove that you fail. So our community inside in the grips of the empire, we should rebel of empire, and they will should be very happy every time that people any oppressed people around the world smash the imperialists. For us, we should glorify it. If people in the Palestine is rebel against the Zionist state, we should be very happy to see it. We should not sing like our slave master. We must be continuous in rebellion, and never be domesticated. So our diaspora across the world, organize, mobilize, and fight. Not like this fucking Jacobins that write articles. If Burkina Faso is doing right, is Thomas Sankara, shut the fuck up. It's not your concern to say that we reclaim Thomas Sankara. It's not them to say this Palestinian struggle, this Iran, this. Shut the fuck up and do your part instead of write bullshit that nobody will read. So if you are in court of empire, you are not classified as an enemy. Probably you are walking with the enemy.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes. Well, it was a beautiful visit to Cova Da Moura with our amazing revolutionary brother Flávio Almada. And one last time, we're looking at the living community here that is still struggling and alive and has a community feeling under all these pressures of colonialism and imperialism and the oppression of the state. This is the inspiration for us to continue. They can't break us.
No.
They can't break us, brother. And Palestine is at the heart of all our struggles, not because it's Palestine, but because it is standing up against colonialism. If the Palestinians gave up like the people in the UAE and became comprador class,
yes,
we wouldn't be fighting for Palestine. Me as Palestinian, I wouldn't care what happens to Palestine if Palestine wasn't resisting. Brother, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Community.
Long live to the Palestinian resistance.
Until we see you next time, we bid you all a free world free of imperialism, of colonialism, of Zionism, of capitalism. See you soon.
Death to imperialism.